Welcome to Spectrum Sundays. I am Megan Sinisi, Miss Pennsylvania 2021, and the founder of a nonprofit organization for autism titled From a New Perspective. I am also a speech-language pathologist with a master's degree from the University of Missouri.
And I am Francesca D'Alessandro, Miss Thousand Islands of New York, serving my community through AAA appreciation and awareness for autism. I am also a speech-language pathologist with a master's degree from the University at Buffalo.
Everyone deserves to feel accepted and included in every space they walk in. Our series aims to inspire you to advocate for yourself and on behalf of your loved ones, and we are so grateful that you're here with us today.
Katie Shuman is a life coach who specializes in helping neurodivergent women unmask and heal from trauma. Discovering her autistic identity at almost 22 years old led her on a journey of inner healing and self-discovery that she is still on today. Through doing her own self-healing, Katie has become passionate about teaching neurodivergent women how to heal themselves too. In the future, she plans to launch an unmasking and inner healing community for neurodivergent women while traveling in her van home that she's currently building. So before we get to really dive in and get to know you more, we always try to start off the conversation just getting to know you a little bit better as far as how you identify with the autism community. So on Spectrum Sundays, we like to share different perspectives of autism, and they're all equally valid. So autism can be described as or labeled as person first language, which would be saying person with autism, or there's diagnosis first language, which is saying autistic person. Do you have a preference for one over the other as we continue this conversation? And if so, do you feel comfortable sharing on why?
Yeah, I always prefer autistic personally, because like when I think of like person with autism, and no disrespect to anyone who wants to identify in that way, I'll respect however anyone wants to identify. Like I just think that autistic for me, it's like it's all of who I am. It's not like an illness or some kind of disorder that I'm trying to get rid of. It's like it affects all of me, and so I'm proud of it.
Absolutely. And that is very often the perspective that we hear from self-advocates. But I love that you touched upon the fact that everyone's perspective on how they choose to identify with their autism is valid. And that's something that we really try to embrace as well on Spectrum Sundays, because there's a spectrum of ideas as well as a spectrum of experiences with autism. But you touched a little bit on the neurodiversity piece. And I think that played a huge role in helping people embrace their identity as being autistic. And that's really been the driving force of using autistic and taking back the name and using it as a way to empower those with autism to feel good about that being a huge part of their identity and contributing to their success. So since this is a fairly new movement and a new term, it can often be misunderstood as well. Could you take a little time to just explain what the neurodiversity community means to you and what that term specifically means in your life?
Yeah, so neurodiversity, I guess I'll start out with that. Like, I guess it just means an appreciation for all of the ways that we're different. And we all just, whether we're neurodivergent or neurotypical, we all have different things that make us who we are. And so neurodiversity is just a way of appreciating the way that you exist in the universe, because we all have like little different ways that we exist, and it all makes up the world and gives us all different things that we need. And the neurodiversity community has helped me a lot in coming to terms with my own identity and just helping me really to have more compassion for myself and to not judge myself so harshly for a lot of my shortcomings and struggles. Because looking at other people like me, it's like, oh, I would judge myself so harshly for this. But then looking at someone else who's so similar to me, it's like I'm just like looking at myself back to them, and it's like, well, if you can give them that understanding, why can't you give yourself that same understanding? And so meeting people online through Instagram in particular, that's been really helpful in helping me to practice more of that self-kindness for myself.
I really love your perspective on this and how reflective that you've been on this process for you. And I think everyone, whether they're part of the neurotypical or the neurodiverse community, can take that piece of wisdom with them in their everyday lives and have self-compassion, but also spread that to compassion for others as well. And it's part of the healing process, but also part of the acceptance for just general diversity that's out there, whether that be neurologically or otherwise.
Absolutely.
I do want to take a little bit more of a turn of gears and talk a little bit more about that self-healing, because you do coach a lot on it, in that self-discovery, which is a part of a mission to empower others. For those who might feel afraid or hesitant to start that journey because it might feel intimidating, or maybe they just don't know where to start, what words of encouragement would you like to share with those people?
Well, I think like just what stops us all from diving deeper into discovering ourselves as humans is like we just fear meeting the darker parts of ourselves, because we fear that they somehow make us unlovable and broken or just inherently negative or something like that. And like we may not believe that consciously, but subconsciously we're being driven by that. And so for so many years, like I tried to mask like the belief that I had very low self-worth because I'm like in my 20s and I struggled a lot with like financial independence, like living with my mom for a super long time. I still live with my mom. I'm on my way to moving out soon, but just all of these like little things that I thought that like made me like less. And then like once I started like really diving into those things about myself that I was so afraid to face, it really helped me find purpose and meaning. And it's like I would encourage anyone who is afraid of like what they're going to find if they start digging deeper. Like you might find some things that are going to feel uncomfortable to go through, but it's things that you need to feel that are going to lead you into like more of your purpose. You're going to find real meaning and real beauty in your life. And so with like all of my struggles, because I feel like I had a fairly normal childhood, I was able to mask a lot and be like, oh, I feel very normal. And it wasn't really until my like late 20s or my early 20s and just getting out of high school and like, oh, like, why am I not reaching all these other milestones that other people are meeting in their lives at this time, and feeling a lot of shame for that. And it's like, I felt like that made me broken for so long. And it's like now after doing all this work, it helped me realize like, I am enough exactly as I am. And it's like my worth is inherent and there's nothing that could ever change that. And anything that anyone or any of my own projections, like we would all have to say, like, it's all an illusion. It's not true. And so now like my mission has become to really help other neurodivergent people like me, like especially the ones who have struggled in those ways, that like you're so enough exactly as you are. There's like nothing that you have to do to earn your worth. Like you're enough. And that's really like my mission. And it's like, that's what I discovered in digging deeper in that way. And like, I would just encourage anyone who has any fears, like it might feel uncomfortable, but you're going to find something like far more beautiful than you've ever imagined. So it's worth it.
I love that so much. And I would love to just take everything you just said and just write it on my bathroom mirror and repeat it to myself every day, because self-discovery is a journey that everybody is on, I feel. But I had some questions that popped up in my mind as you were speaking. You mentioned about the fact that you felt like you had a pretty normal or typical childhood because you were able to mask. I have a follow-up question, because I'm curious to know whether you realized in the moment whether you were masking, and if not, if that played into maybe an internalized trauma that you didn't really understand was happening, which made you want to seek self-healing.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that like, because I pushed so much deeper and all these things deeper into my subconscious growing up, like so many of us did. And it's like, I don't want to face this about myself. And so I don't think I totally was like fully conscious of it. And it wasn't until I was like almost 22 that my boyfriend at the time, like even like he pointed out that I was autistic. Without him, I probably still wouldn't know today. And like, that's really what led me on that journey of finding out. But I would say like growing up, I mean, I was conscious of like certain things that like I would try to hide about myself, like just certain stems, or like, oh, I feel like, why am I doing this? It feels so weird. But I think overall, I wasn't conscious of it.
Okay, well, thank you for explaining that. That's kind of what I anticipated your answer to be, but I'm also curious about anyone who might be listening who has heard a lot about self-care. That's been a very hot topic and something that a lot of people have really tried to embrace, especially throughout the pandemic, to take care of ourselves. So is there a difference between self-care and self-healing? And if there is, could you help share a little bit about that?
I guess that's a little bit hard of a question for me to answer because I think like ultimately self-care, it looks so different. Like our media will tell us like, oh, it's like bubble baths and face masks and all these things. And it can be that, but I think that a really good definition for self-care that I've heard before is like self-care is giving yourself anything you need and also removing all the things that you don't need in your life. So I think that it kind of intersects with self-healing in that way.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, thank you for clarifying that. And it's definitely something that we can all take into consideration in our own lives, but especially within the neurodivergent community, because I feel like they're much more susceptible to having to mask and having to feel like they're not enough or they're not worthy of these things. And as you said, that none of that is true. Unfortunately, we're going into a direction where more people can feel comfortable and embracing exactly who they are without limitations, without judgment, and with a lot of appreciation. So something that you have recently adopted into your self-healing and self-care journey is traveling in a van home. That's a dream that you have, to travel across the states, I'm assuming. And it's also a very new trend. So could you share more about what that process looks for you right now and what you hope to do with it?
Yeah, so I just got my van a few months ago. It's a 2013 silver Ford Transit Connect. So I'm really excited about that. It's like a little minivan. It's like, nothing like I didn't want anything like too drastic for me because I still have like anxiety with driving bigger vehicles. So that's where we are now. I haven't started any of the conversion yet. Although I have purchased like a few things like the insulation and the fan that I'm going to use, but I have all of that ahead of me in the next few months. So I'm going to be really busy converting that. And I want to just, yeah, like you said, travel across the states and just have that experience of traveling by myself. And, it'll be like the first time I've been on my own. So I'm excited for that. And I guess I also have like always wanted to do that just to push myself to get out of my comfort zone and feel more comfortable like wherever I am, because that's something that people who travel solo say, like, I love how comfortable I can just be like in any situation, and I definitely want to cultivate more of that in my life.
That's awesome. I've been hearing a little bit more about that the van life trend, and then also like mini homes has both been like hot topics right now, and I'm kind of getting into both. So I'm going to definitely be following your journey as you are building that experience for yourself, and definitely looking forward to any type of pictures you take or documentation you do, because I think it's just an awesome, different thing that not many people would have the courage to just explore and just say, I'm going to do this. So that's so exciting. And as we're continuing on with our conversation, either about the autism community or just general things that you enjoy, could you share some of your favorite resources and organizations that you like to follow to stay informed?
Sure. I don't really have like that many organizations that I follow, but one resource that's been really helpful for me is the book The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. I don't know if y'all have ever heard of it, but there's a practice in that book called morning pages, and that's been instrumental in helping me unmask. It's basically a practice that you do every day, and she explains it more in the book, where you just write whatever thoughts will come to your mind, like no editing or overthinking allowed. And that's really hard to do at first. When I first started that practice, I realized like, oh, I'm masking like through this. And it was like through that process of realizing that I was masking, it was just learning how to unmask. And it's like when you kind of just like catch yourself doing things on autopilot that have been, they've just been a pattern for you for so long, like you're not even fully aware of that. And in like that practice of just writing whatever thoughts come to your mind is like so helpful. And like that book is full of so many other creative practices that you can really take to help you unmask, because so much of unmasking that I'm finding is like healing our self-expression and just getting in touch with our creativity. It's just everything that you're looking for in unmasking, and like getting in touch with your creativity and your authentic self, I think you'll find in that book. And then another resource that has been really helpful for me is just learning about breath work. And I would recommend, if anyone is interested in that, to just like go on YouTube. They have so many different guided breathwork tutorials that you can follow, and just start out small, like box breathing. That's a really simple thing you can do, but like that kind of stuff like will just instantly change your state of mind. And like I know like meditation is kind of hard for me. I still do it, but it's still hard for me. And I feel like breath work is more of an inclusive thing that might help a lot more neurodivergent people, because it's like you're not just like sitting and focusing on your breath, you're doing specific breathing patterns. And that kind of helps you to stay like a little bit more present and more involved with it, at least I find. So that might be an option that helps a lot of people too.
I love those suggestions. I have found that I love journaling, but there are times that I almost feel like I'm writing for an audience and not just for me, or to get all of my thoughts out on paper. So I'll have to look up that resource. And in the breathing exercises, I've heard so many people say that they're extremely beneficial for relaxation and to de-stress. So I think that that's awesome that it's also helped you as well. But as we're wrapping up today, we wanted to ask just one last question from you. What is one message that you'd like our viewers to remember from our conversation today, either about autism, neurodiversity, self-care, or anything that you would like to share?
I think it just goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is you are enough. Like, that's it. That's like, you're enough regardless of how much money you make or don't make, or what you did today or didn't do. Like, we're all enough.
Absolutely. And we all should scream it from the mountaintops very loudly and proudly. Well, thank you so much, Katie, for visiting with us on Spectrum Sundays. We really enjoyed getting to know you a little bit and learning about how you take self-healing into your own life and how you embrace your identity as a whole. So if you enjoyed this episode as well, please make sure to visit Katie on Instagram at Katie Wild and Free, and make sure to follow all of her projects. Thank you, everyone, and we will see you next Sunday. Thank you for listening to Spectrum Sundays. We are your hosts, Miss Pennsylvania Megan Sinisi.
And Francesca D'Alessandro, Miss Thousand Islands. Please make sure to subscribe to our series and follow us on social media to stay connected to autism professionals and self-advocates.
And remember, true impact is accomplished through active listening and exploring the world through a variety of perspectives.
Join us next week on Spectrum Sundays to help cultivate a community of inclusion, appreciation, and acceptance around autism.